Okay, why did I stop drinking alcohol? And how did I go from party guy, constantly going out on nights out, binge drinking, part of the UK culture, to British champion at 100k and getting my marathon time from 4 hours 25 in my first marathon to 2 hours and 21 minutes and representing England at the marathon and then Great Britain at the ultra marathon. You don't realize it at the time, but by the time you've got to 18, 19, 20 years old and you're able to form your own opinions and make your own good decisions on things, alcohol is already a fixture in your life. It's already a regular fixture in your life. And when I was 14 years old, I went to an all-boys school and most of the kids in my class drank. I was definitely the outcast. And they would drink pretty much every weekend. And a lot of them, most of them would drink every weekend and some even after school. And the only reason I stayed out of that and didn't succumb to peer pressure was because I listened to whatever my dad said. And my dad was, if you want to be a footballer, you cannot let alcohol sort of enter your life. And even though he drank, he was like, the new game is much more athletic, it's much more performance-based, and therefore you've got to be clean. And so that's what I lived with for all of that time. And that's quite difficult for a kid to deal with when they want to be part of the group, when they want to be included. And yet the way for them to be included is to get into something that is absolutely not good for you at any age, especially your young development years. But you just want to be included, you just want to be part of the group. But I guess for me, I had that because I was so sporty and included in all sports. Then I was playing football and cross-country running in the winter, and then mainly I was playing cricket and track and field in the summer. And so all year round I had something, but there was lots of other sports that I would just be into. And that keeps you occupied and it keeps you from getting into the wrong groups. And with alcohol at those ages, naturally other substances come into the equation, and you find yourself at 15, 16, a lot of your friends have experimented with stuff, and naturally you become more and more curious. When I started drinking at 17, it was after I'd had the chat with my dad, who had been able to be honest with me enough to say that you're not good enough to be a footballer, and therefore, you're going to need to do something else. And that was quite early for me. It was like 15, 16 years old, but it was to inject a level of urgency about my studies so that I could get good GCSEs. And it's absolutely what I needed then. But that then led to college and drinking. And drinking for the first time means that, immediately and I remember my first drink and you think this is horrible. Drinking beer, it's a horrible taste initially, and you need to kind of get into it, which is even crazier. But all of a sudden you're in it, and then you're the life and soul of the party, and then you are organizing the parties, and then you're bringing groups of people together without inhibitions that are getting to know each other. And you're still in your discovery years. I'd say you're in your discovery years until you get into your late 20s, at least, maybe even more. Maybe we never leave our discovery years. But what it meant for me is until I left Manchester, age 23, that was everything that I could see around me. And whatever the age, from sort of 14 to your 20s, having a great time in Manchester, to people at work who I worked with, your directors, your managers, they're drinking and they're drinking maybe different drinks, but they're still drinking on a regular basis. And some people are using alcohol as a crutch. That is just what you see in front of you. That's your environment. And so when I moved to Norway, all of a sudden I'm seeing people drink in a different way. It's a much more social drinking. It's much more, okay, let's have a glass of wine with dinner, as opposed to let's drink 10 drinks and let's see how hammered we can get and stick together as a group and go on a night out in Manchester. And so it's a healthier style of drinking. And I'm not saying Norway just drinks in that way. That's very much the Spanish way of drinking as well, which I found later. But it's definitely more controlled drinking in Norway. And so they still have these what are called forspiel parties, which is like foreplay parties, where you go and get absolutely hammered and then you go on a night out. And I would find those really fun because it's like, okay, everybody's on the same page, everybody's going out, and it's very much like the culture that I came from in Manchester and anywhere in the UK. And so I continued to drink, and it continued to be a regular fixture in my life. And even though I had fitness and I was playing football in Norway, and then later on I started to play a lot more rugby when I moved to Spain, that is still your identity. It's still who you are, and it's still on a regular basis. It's how you meet people a lot of the time. Yeah, you start meeting people from sports clubs, met a lot of football players in Norway, rugby players in Spain, cricket players in Spain, but you're still meeting people on the party scene, and the commonality that you share is you both like getting hammered, or you both like alcohol at some level. And all I knew from this life of drinking, and pretty much drinking Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Now, I was in Barcelona, probably the most fun city you can be in, especially if you love partying. You go into clubs, you go into bars, they know your name, you feel like, oh, this is great, everybody knows your name, like that bar from Cheers. And you feel like you've got lots of people around you. In actual fact, what you've got around you is a lot of acquaintances who the commonality is alcohol. And if you take alcohol or substances out of that equation, you're left with very little. You have to get to know each other again. And what I found when I quit drinking is those relationships were built on paper. And so they quickly evaporated. And then what you find is the friendships that you're building, if they are connected by alcohol, if you've met somebody in a bar, if you met somebody in a club, and that's who you see on a regular basis, it's a very fickle relationship. It's a very weak relationship, weak friendship. And I didn't know it at the time, but when I went cycle touring and stopped drinking for a year, what I'd done, and I hadn't realized this, it was complete luck, I think, I'd removed myself from the environments where alcohol was the thing, the connector. And so if I was in Manchester, much more difficult to give up drinking because everything you get invited to involves alcohol. Also, much more easier in Norway to give up drinking. In Spain, when I was living, it was much more that partying brought us together. And so those things, alcohol and everything else that comes with it, that was bringing us together. And again, I have literally 2 friends from Barcelona that I still keep in contact with from a year of knowing lots of people because partying brought us together. And those figures alone speak to me. But when I went cycle touring, all of a sudden, my job on a day-to-day basis is to explore, is to enjoy myself on the bike and get from where I am at the moment in a tiny village to the next village that happens to have a hostel or a hotel. And that's your job. And so you're on the bike for 8, 10, 12 hours per day. The last thing you want to be doing, and some of my friends here do it, but the last thing you want to be doing is drinking and then having bad sleep and then getting on the bike the next day and you're a little bit hungover and it's not really working. It works for some people, but it doesn't work for me. So all of a sudden, after that year, I'd had a year without drinking. And the only reason I went back is because one of my friends was getting married. And he was getting married in the UK, in Manchester, but the stag party was in Mallorca. And so I went back to Mallorca after living in Norway, living in Spain, and traveling extensively in Southeast Asia. All of a sudden I got back, not even to the UK, but to Mallorca, and immediately alcohol was the connector. Of course, it's a stag party. I didn't expect it to be any different. And so although I didn't want to drink, and it's a stag party, so, not a great environment to go back into after you've not been drinking for 12 months, but I could easily do that today and have fun and still be there and just have the right answer for people who are trying to talk you in. And I see guys, whether they're 16 years old or 46 years old, get talked into, literally succumb to peer pressure because their answer to why they are not drinking is not the right answer. My answer was, I haven't drank for 12 months. Well, no worries, you can start today. Well, I'm not drinking. Why are you not drinking? Again, it's whereas the answer really should be, I do not drink. I don't drink anymore. And so immediately, that's enough to shut most people up. Of course, your closest friends, the ones that you know that you've been the party guy before, they're always going to try to talk you into it. But I don't drink is powerful. And so that puts you into another area. And what you find is all of a sudden the friends that you're meeting are different friends because your day looks different, your life looks different. It's easier for you to make better decisions. Certainly when it comes to running or fitness, diet make so much easier to make decisions when you don't factor alcohol into that weekly schedule. And even if it's binge drinking and you're like, well, you know, my diet over the week looks pretty good, but all of a sudden Saturday and Sunday go off the rails, empty calories. Very difficult to factor that in unless it's social drinking and you've got to a point where you're literally having 1 or 2 glasses of red wine every weekend. And that's, you factoring that in. Very, very difficult to do it. And so if you then couple that I don't drink together with I'm trying to achieve something big in running, all of a sudden there's 2 reasons why you're not absolutely not drinking. And therefore you're in a different category altogether, but you start to meet different people and all of a sudden those friends, they're not drinking either or completely accept you for somebody who doesn't drink. And so you do things that are not related to alcohol. So you don't go to bars and you don't go to clubs, or if you do, the people that you're with have completely accepted you for you. And therefore, like the 2 guys that I still have friends from Barcelona, Colin and Danny, they are just like, they're on that journey with you. So they've seen party version of me. They've seen the guy that doesn't want to stop drinking, that doesn't want the party to stop. And now they've seen, okay, runner Lee and fitness Lee. And therefore we're with you on that journey because we love you for who you are. And then it's a great filter, because if you're not on this journey with me because you only liked Party Lee, then that version of me, I feel, has improved and is somewhere else now. And so if you don't want to be with me for me, you know, as cheesy as it sounds, then we can't be friends anymore. Or we'll only be friends in certain situations, and eventually that fizzles out. And the pros well outweigh the cons when it comes to drinking, naturally. And it's so obvious when you stop drinking to feel all the differences. And you will wonder why you hadn't done it much before. I stopped drinking in 2009. And naturally, you have more energy. And there's not days in the week that are complete write-offs because you've had loads to drink the night before. You don't go through mood swings or energy swings. Everything stays a lot more consistent. And as I said before, it's way easier to make the right decisions, whether it's fitness, whether it's diet, whether it's the people you hang around with. It's easier to make better decisions. It's also easier to build a business if you don't drink alcohol. You're much more productive in your job, and you're going to be better at your job without alcohol. These things are obvious. Now, you can have a great business, have a functional business, a great career. You can have a great relationship. You can have great friendships with alcohol. Don't get me wrong. For me, it's just 100 times easier without alcohol. And so I'm more energetic. I'm more creative. I'm more enthusiastic about life. I feel more passionate about the things that I'm really into, and I feel like I'm on the right path. And that's something, those spiritual awakenings will come at you more frequently because you've not got something on your back that's kind of weighing you down in the form of alcohol. And when we talk about decision making, when it comes to choosing a life partner, ideally alcohol would be far away from that decision making. Ironically, it's often people get together because of alcohol, because the guy actually plucks up the confidence to go and ask the girl, and people get together that way. For me, that has always been a case of, okay, you surely want to know yourself as well as you possibly can. And although that is an ever-evolving journey, you certainly know yourself better at 30 than you do at 18 years old, and even better than you were at 26. You're constantly growing in those years. And when it comes to choosing a life partner and choosing relationships, then you've probably had some experience of what works, what doesn't work, and more importantly, what you value in other human beings. And that might be ethics, it might be their work ethic, it might be their values and what they see for their future, their vision and ambitions. That stuff is incredibly important. And although you've got that initial chemistry, once you know yourself really well and what you appreciate in other human beings, that decision is made way more easy. So if you think about just those areas, fitness, running, diet, relationship, career, whether it's business or your job, then you bring children into it, and you're naturally going to be a better father if you've not got a bad relationship to alcohol, and if you're not drinking on a regular basis. If you just look at those areas and see that those are going to be way enhanced, much more improved without alcohol than with it, then already it's an easy decision to make. And once you get into that and you're not drinking and you see all those things improving, they're all moving up, then you know you've made the right decision. Which kind of sadly also takes me on to the part of vanity. And you get to a certain age where all of a sudden people around you are thinking about things like anti-aging and longevity. And most simple point, if I look at my friends, some of them look 10 years older, some of them look 10 years younger. And what I see is the simple differentiator between those two groups is alcohol, exercise, sleep, and reduce stress. So if you just look at removing alcohol and starting to exercise, you're already looking after that anti-aging, that longevity, before it even becomes a problem. So whatever stage you're at in your life, this is a turning point for you right now. It amazes me, like in Dubai, you can go for miles on streets that are just about cosmetic surgery and anti-aging devices and Botox and fillers and all these different things. I only know a lot of these words because you see them so frequently in Dubai. But those people, they wouldn't want to exercise 10 or 15 or 20 years ago. And it's still available for them now and will make them look way younger than they are. So yeah, I just wanted to share that with you because I feel that it's certainly growing up in the UK and growing up in Manchester and anywhere in Northern Europe, it's such a part of your life that unless you move away from that and you're lucky enough to break that chain, then it probably always will be part of your life in some way. And there's different levels to that, of course. You've got some people who cannot live without it, and some people have learnt to just have one. Of course, I know that, and I'm generalizing. But in short, for me, life is just way better without alcohol. But let me know in the comments, what is your relationship to alcohol and how has that changed over time? And was it running that helped you make that change?